Hi, good night, everyone, and welcome to this long-awaited session, Merchandising the Right Way. I know many people have questions about how to go about merchandising, how to take their brands and what to do with it, where to put it. How do you really decide how you're going to begin the merchandising process? So as promised, we are here live at 8:31 and just going to give some people a few minutes to jump on. I'm going to let them know we're here. Wave if you're here. Just let's get started. Okay. So just a matter of some housekeeping. As promised, well, the branding queen herself, Cassia, was supposed to be here tonight. However, she's not able to be with us. But fear not, we're going to have a part 2. She's going to drop those creative tips on you and let you know how to add a unique technique, unique perspective to your brand. So I will just just wait a few seconds, wave, say hi, let me know you're here so that we can we can get into this merchandising the right way. I want to hear what merchandising means to you. Let me know what type of merchandising you're doing. Is it a product, goods, service? Let me know. So I am going to get into this discussion soon. I have a whole lot of good stuff to share with you. So I am going to just wait a few seconds and we are going to be on our way with this very interesting discussion about how to get around to your merchandising. What does merchandising mean to you? Okay, so I am going to jump right into tonight's discussion about merchandising the right way. So the first thing you must consider when you want to get into merchandising is you have to identify your business trademark. So really, what is your business trademarks? I mean, sometimes you hear people throw the word around trademarks, but what really is your trademark? You have to consider what are your visual identifiers. How do people know that you offer a particular good, product, or service? What distinguishes you from your competitor? That is really, when you have that concept in your mind, that's where you begin identifying your trademark. So really think to yourself, what are my trademarks? How can people find me? How can I stand out in a crowd? And when you think about identifying your trademark, some of the things that you need to consider in your business are, what are my brand colors? What is the trade dress? What is the layout of my store? If you have a particular store and you're thinking about getting into franchising, these are the things that you need to have to bear in mind at all times. Right? You'll want to consider if you're using any logos, any slogans. Unique songs, believe it or not, can be trademarked, and a lot of people don't know that. But it's something that I think if you have something that is really unique to you, that you should really consider that this is something that you can identify as your trademark. Also, part of your trademarks are things like your mascots. Those are your trademarks. If you use a particular character to identify your business, that's your trademark as well. And these are the things that you really want to protect when you start thinking about the merchandising process. These are the things you want to make sure that, I have registered, I have secure, so you can take it to the next realm of getting into the discussion of, okay, let me see where I'm going to place these products in the merchandising chain of events. So merchandising really stems from identifying your business trademarks. Once you identify your business trademarks, then you take it to the next level and then you get into the merchandising aspect of the discussion. So far, just to recount for anybody who missed it, we're talking first of identifying your business trademarks. What in your business that you could look around and say, okay, you know what? These are my visual identifiers. This is what distinguishes me from competitor X, Y, or Z down the street. this is what I'm using. This is what sets me apart. These are my colors. These are my color schemes. The combination of these colors is what makes me different. Those are your business trademarks, and those are the things that you want to protect. If you have a mascot for your business, if you have a slogan for your business, those are the things that you want to protect. If you have, well, obviously, the most obvious thing that a lot of people are drawn to are logos. It's obvious, and it's the first thing that you're drawn to, but you have to think outside the box that your trademarks evolve far beyond that. Now, when we get into talking about also ways that you can merchandise, sometimes persons have like characters, or if you looked on the event page, I reference a very well-known 80s character that was used to sell a beverage called Fido. Fido was very popular, and it was at the height of when 7-Up used to be, you know, had ads, etc. And that is element of character merchandising. Even things like when Walt Disney uses Disney Minnie and Mickey Mouse, those kind of characters is really what you look at as character merchandising. So think about your business, think of what type of business you have, and if there's any element of that, even if there's a online avatar or something that, you know, is unique to your business, those are the things that amount to your trademark, and those are the things that you really want to think about securing. So there are various steps into getting into merchandising. So the first thing is to identify your trademarks, and then the second step along the way is to look at what marks you're currently using before you get to the registration process. You need to make sure that the marks you're using are not descriptive, they're not literal, they're not generic, then there's no obscenities. Believe it or not, all these things are requirements in the act that would prevent you from getting the mark that you know you've been using all the time registered. You have to make sure that it doesn't go against the morality. And I know that could be subjective, but there are certain things that are very blatant that, you know, it might be termed offensive that you may not be able to trademark. So you need to consider those things when you getting into the merchandising process. So the first step is to identify your marks. The second stage of the process is to ensure that the marks that you're using meet the requirements for registration. If it doesn't meet the requirements for registration, the mark would not be protected, okay? Make sure your marks are not generic. If you're selling ice cream, hair products, whatever service you have, you don't want to go with a mark that is very descriptive, that says Bunny's ice cream store and an ice cream cone. That is a descriptive and a generic mark. And also something that I noticed in a group discussion recently, where persons had registered their company name is registered as one thing, and they doing some in terms of their visual and their brand identification. The concept, some people may have the concept that because your business name, when you register your business, may be Betty's Ice Cream Limited, for example. Betty's Ice Cream Limited does not have to be your brand. Betty's Ice Cream Limited is just your business name. You can go by the brand image as BLT. Well, BIL if you want, Betty's Ice Cream Limited. You're not pigeonholed when it comes to visually identifying yourself. There are many ways that you can go about putting your graphics or your representation out to your customers. So don't always think that because your company is registered in a particular name that you're stuck with that name for registration purposes, okay? So I'll just give a few seconds. Let me just see if anybody else is going to jump on and join the discussion. Don't always think that because your company is registered. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I'm just checking my notes. So let's just getting straight back into the discussion about registration of, you know, having the best type of registration. No descriptive registration, no literal registration, no generic registration, no obscenities, things that don't go against morality within your particular country. Those are the things, there's some of the things that may be specific. Those are some of the things that you don't want to have when you are looking to get to the registration process. These are the things that you want to have. So pay close attention. You want to be unique, right? Remember, you want to be unique. You want to be unique. You want to think outside the box. It's okay to make up words. It's okay to come up with something that is totally not the same. Hi, Jason. Thanks for tuning in. It's okay to be unique. It's okay to think outside of the box. It's okay to make up words. It's okay to have something that is so separate from what you are registered as. You don't need to stick within that box. When you're thinking about getting into the branding and the merchandising side of your business, the best registration you can give to yourself is something that is not a cookie cutter. Is not along the lines of what it is your business is. So I would advise people to sometimes go in the next direction. Go, think outside the box, think as big and as wild as you can, because that is really what you want to capture your customers and your audience. You want something that will stand out, and that is what gives you the strongest kind of registration, along with graphics that could identify yourself. Okay, so please always bear that in mind. Now, once you have all those things together, then you're getting into you have to go unregistered. Please, 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 please go unregistered. Because if you're going to get into merchandising and your brand becomes, a very household image, a household name, you really want to make sure that you're secured and that your mark is on the register and you have a certificate, you have a trademark certificate, which is valid for 10 years. You want to have that in your possession. Now, the benefits that you can get out of having it registered is you can get into licensing. You can, if your brand is so powerful, it is financially secure, it is attracting the right kind of attention, you're going to have other persons who would want to be associated with that brand. You're going to have even probably your competitors may decide, what, my business isn't doing too well, I want to decide to trade as your brand, and they would approach you and say, okay, I want to get into a licensing type of agreement. I want to start thinking about franchising with you. So those are the things that you want to have at your disposal by creating the type of merchandising that will give you that effect. Okay, so always, always, always remember this. So the benefits of trademark registration, licensing, and merchandising. Merchandising will bring in a lot of royalties. You get a lot of money from, your products being sold in various locations, various stores. People would want to be associated with your product. Sponsorship is going to come your way. Once you merchandise properly, sponsorship is going to come your way. And again, developing the basics that I went through before will get you to that sponsorship level, will get your brand identified, will get your brand wanting to be seen with various events or aligned with various companies. So you making sure that you have all those things in place will get you to that stage of, I first have identified, and let's go through it again. I want this to stick with you when you leave. First, identify your business trademarks. After you identify everything that is your business trademarks, you want to make sure that it meets the requirements. You want to make sure it's not descriptive, it's not literal, it's not generic. After you go through all those clauses to make sure that those pointers to make sure that your brand visuals or whatever it is you're going to register falls within those requirements, then you take it to the next step and you say, okay, I have everything together and I'm going to register it. So you have fulfilled all these steps and then you go to registration. When you get to registration now, then you start to say, okay, how can I maximize what it is I have? What can this brand do for me? And that is when you get into the merchandising process. So I had to lay the foundation to let you know when and where we will get to the merchandising part of the discussion. Now, in the event that you decide that, what, I just can't get through, I just don't want to go and register this trademark, what is going to happen is that you're going to have, and you have, let's say your competitor realize your business is doing so well, and they want to go and start taking your visuals and trading as in the same type of business that you are doing with the same visuals that you have. You would now want to defend yourself and say, well, okay, no, you can't do that. Everybody knows me, and the example I gave as Betty's Ice Cream Limited. And if you decide now, what, Harry down the street decides, well, okay, Betty's Ice Cream Limited is doing really well, and I want people to come by me instead of going by Betty, and decides to take your visuals and pass it off as instead of Betty, he puts Harry's Ice Cream Limited. What is your position, especially if you didn't register that mark? What you would have to do is rely on a defense, common law defense, which is known as passing off. And as the name states, passing off is really what it is, passing off, meaning that you're passing off somebody else's goods as yours, right? Passing off just simply means that you're passing off the goods that belongs to somebody else, or you're passing off the products or the services as is yours. And when you get to the passing off, having to rely on a passing off defense it's really difficult, because what it involves is your customers and persons who would have used your brands, yes, it's supposed to be here. So please share, because I would have to share after. So if you could share this on the event page. Thank you so much, Cyan, for jumping on tonight. Yes. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to now rely on your customers. You'll have to rely on your the persons who do business with you to come forward and say, I can identify that brand as belonging to Betty instead of belonging to Harry, who was trying to pass it off. So that is why registration is so important, especially if you're going out into the product market, especially if you're going out to sell goods or whatever type of service. You really want to have your trademark secured so that you don't have to now go and depend on a common law defense, because a common law defense will involve you having to go now and get evidence to support it through your customers or through people who know you or who would have done business with you. And you really don't want to have to go through such a convoluted defense. Well, it's not convoluted, but it will require you having to secure these testimonies to show that you are who you say you are. Okay. So trademark registration, I always advise that if you're going on to merchandising. Now, an important part of merchandising that you would have to know your business is pick products that align with your brand. If you are selling, for instance, and this is just a broad example, let's say somebody who is selling products for children and they decide, you know what, I want to get into putting out baby bottles, for example, and people know, you know, this imagery to be associated with baby bottles. That particular company may not decide now to say, well, okay, you know what, I might get into a sponsorship deal, or I might decide to start selling my visuals or align my visuals with somebody who's selling whiskey. So you have to know what type of product or service that you're offering, and you have to decide to find do merchandising within a capacity that aligns with your brand. So if, for instance, somebody like me, I'm going to use myself as an example. I do stuff within, you know, education, information, that sort of stuff. I would want to have my visuals on things like pens, notepads, things that are easy for people to practical to my brand, and things that people would be useful, not something that is too way out or too left field from what you're doing. So try to keep your merchandising within the realm of what your brand is known for, what your brand is familiar with the type of service or product that you're selling. Any questions? Just feel free to drop your questions below. Now, this is very, very, very controversial. There's a fine line, and I'm going to say it slowly. There's a fine line between inspiration and imitation. There's a very, very fine line between inspiration and imitation. And I'm going to use some popular examples. For instance, okay, let's see, you know, Disney came out with Frozen. Frozen was beaten a while, and you know, everything was frozen this, frozen that, Elsa and Anna. It was all over and it was everywhere. Now you are in the business of, let's say you're doing you do childcare, or you do you run things that are catered for a children's market, and you said, well, okay, you know what, I want to start doing some merchandising, and you decide, well, okay, I'm going to put out a storybook, or I'm going to put out a series of poems. And you said, well, you decide, okay, this is a good idea. I'm going to put out a series of poems. Now you decide to go to the market with the series of poem in a package, and you decide to put the packaging with the same colors as Elsa and Anna. Now, colors is one thing. Now you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to get somebody with white long hair, an image of somebody with white long hair on the cover, and I am going to get somebody with a blue dress and another girl standing up next to her in the same colors as Elsa and Anna. What you're doing is trying to confuse your consumers into believing that the product you're putting out is associated with the Disney products. So you are not just using inspiration. What you're actually doing is copying and imitating another brand. And what is going to happen is when you put your product or goods or service on a website, because websites have to have what is called a DMC on their site, that that they're not going to infringe, etc. What is going to happen is when you put that product or goods on a website, it's going to be removed, because it falls from inspiration to imitation. You cannot align yourself with a brand without having a license. Remember the early part of the discussion, I talked about having a license, sponsorship, merch, and franchising. Now, that company or entity, if you want to approach them and you get a license to do so, fine. But anything that is very closely associated to their current goods or services or their products is going to land you in problems. It's going to land you in a lot of problems. So how you get away from imitation and inspiration, if you want to go with the same colors, fine. If you want to go with a variation of the same colors, fine. If you want to include that within your current brand, what you're using with your brand, and decide, well, to go with some images particular to your brand, particular to the things that I identified earlier, all that is fine. But when time you start taking images that are known and recognized, names, symbols, anything else that is not particular to your brand, is when you're going to run into problems. Because think about it. If you had your brand and somebody took your mascot and decided to just shade out, keep the frame of your mascot and shade in their colors and use that mascot on top of their t-shirt or their chain, you're gonna have an issue with that. So it's the same concept with other brands. You need to be careful when you're doing inspiration and imitation. All right? So I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of these factors. Be clear with what you're doing in terms of when you're getting into trademark registration. Be clear with what you have for your branding. Make sure that it's not descriptive, it's not literal, and then make sure that you register it. I always advise people to come talk to a trademark attorney or somebody familiar with intellectual property before you get to the registration process. And why I say this is because a lot of time people invest money with their graphics. They start running out and printing flyers, banners, and a whole line of products. And then they say, okay, they come and they say, well, okay, I want to go and register. But at that stage, what they have is something that cannot be registered because it may be a trademark infraction, depending on how their brand is set up and what they are trying to register. So things that are just too descriptive, it's not going to cut it. Right, trademark registration. The trademark registration falls into classes depending on what type of goods or service you're offering, right? So if you are into health, you have a health product, that first cost is going to be $300 for the registration, actually, to go and fill out the form. And I want to be very clear. This is to just fill out the form and to just drop it. That is $300. Now, if for every additional class that you're going to have your goods in, you're going to have, okay, so I said health products. So if you want to sell a list of services, all of that will fall under health. But if you want to start selling t-shirts now aligned with your health products, that are going to be in a different class. So every time you get into a different class of of goods and services, it's going to be different. Okay, so it's the first class starts at $300. And after that, every other class, it's $100, at least in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me be very clear. And this is separate and apart from legal fees and the cost of getting a certificate. There's a cost to advertise in the papers because it takes a while. The Ministry of Legal Affairs, specifically the Intellectual Property Department, gives it between 6 to 9 months. Now, this is just a rough average, depending on if something is wrong with your application, if you have to disclaim again, if you have literal things within your mark, things that are very descriptive, all those things will have to be disclaimed, and then it will slow down the process. So I hope that answered your question. And thank you so much, Gabriel. So those are some of the things that you have to be mindful of. You have to pay attention to when you're getting into the trademark process. And that is why I started off by saying that please, 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 please make sure you speak to somebody. Make sure you have your marks reviewed before you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to go and register them. Make sure that it doesn't, there are no infractions under the trademark legislation, because what will happen is that you'll pay your $300, you pay for how many other classes that you might want to be in, and your mark is going to be refused. So better you go through the process of having it vetted so that you could go back and you can make whatever necessary changes with your graphic artist or who may have done your images before you get to the registration process. Okay, just be very careful about that. And again, once you have it right, a good mark and everything could lead to sponsorship, merchandising, deals, you know, because sometimes brands collaborate, and it could also lead to franchising. What if your trademark or potential trademark is infringed upon during your registration process? Well, at that point, well, you're right. You said it's a potential trademark. At that stage, you don't have a registered mark, right? So it depends on who is using it. And as I said before, where marks are not registered, you would have to rely on the common law defense of passing off. So what you'll have at that stage is have to rely on your passing off defense to establish that that mark was being used by you during the time that it wasn't registered. So that will be, you'll have to send out a pre-action protocol letter, let the person know that, you were using this mark for a particular point in time since however long, and that what they are doing is infringing on a mark that belongs to you. So that is really what will happen pending approval of the mark. And that's why sometimes when you see the TM, that that lets people, at least it's supposed to be a guide, same way how you'll see C with the circle. That is supposed to be a guide to let persons know that, okay, same way how it has copyright, that the TM, it lets people know that it's a trademark. When it is finally registered, then it will have the R in it, and you will get your certificate at the end of the process. So I hope that answers your question, Kwesi, that in the meantime, what you'll have is what you'll have to rely on is your common law defense of passing off, because your mark hasn't been approved. It has to be vetted and go through all the necessary checks and balances and the necessary stages that is required by the Ministry of Legal Affairs. So I hope this was very informative. I actually didn't, I've been here with you guys for about almost half an hour. So please let me know. I'm going to stay around for a few minutes to see if you have any questions, if there's anything else you want to ask. Always have your mark vetted before registering. Be careful between inspiration and imitation. Try and stay away from anything that is related to other persons' slogans, somebody else's visuals, anybody else character. Disney, those people are going to come after you. Disney does not play with their brands. Stay away from those things and try to make if you want to go in that direction, use your colors with your identifiers, with your characters, if you have any avatars or anything like that, but make it unique to you. Try and stay away from using other businesses or companies or entities' product images to align it with yours unless you have permission to do so. And in the next discussion, our the branding queen is going to give you that fresh perspective. She's going to give you, some ideas that may be more, that will align with what you want to achieve creatively. So I'm just here to let you know about the legal implications and really what you need to do to have the best trademark application. You want the visuals with something that is out of the box, unique, and has a really nice flair and name to it. How is a trademark valued in business? Is it worth $10? Is it worth $10 or 10 or 100? Well, you know what really values a trademark? And they have companies that actually do like asset management, but you really want to start thinking about how much you would have invested along the way, where your brand is now in terms of commercially, to where you started in terms of what you would have spent. Always quantify those things. Always have your receipts if you did any rebranding. If you sold any of your products in stores, what has been the price over the period of time while you have been selling the product. You want to see where your competitors are in the market and see where your brand or your products are. So it is a lot of things, a lot of circumstances like that will go into pricing, but they have international companies that will do an evaluation of actually what your brand is worth. I have the formula. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I will look for it and I will put it in the comment section. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I hope this was informative and you are going to view merchandising in a different light and align it with your trademarks. So thanks for joining. I just have one request. If you found this video informative, if you found it helpful, please share, please tell a friend. And yeah, so that when we get to the part 2, it's going to be a very dynamic discussion. So thanks for joining in and yeah, good night. Bye, everyone. You can always leave your questions after. I will get back to you. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.